sponsor of our Canadian bobsleigh teams.
Earlier this week in Eagles, the women went down this course, and of course women's bobsleigh making its Olympic debut in Salt Lake City next year. This is an important season for the likes of Christina Smith and Kathleen Salakin, because if Canada can finish in the top 3 overall this year on the circuit, they'll get 2 sleds entered in Salt Lake City.
Christina Smith used to come up to me with this nice little smile.
While she looks terrific in Eagles, Ivo Ferriani, the Canadian coach, ecstatic with that performance as Christina Smith and Kathleen Salakin win the bronze medal in the 2-man competition. That's the first medal of the season for the Canadians. A great start to them early in the year, hoping, of course, to translate that into further success when they host the Worlds later in Calgary.
It was a lovely couple runs and wonderful pushing by my beautiful brakeman, and I really enjoy this track. It's awesome.
A buoyant Christina Smith with reason to look forward to the Women's World Championships coming up March 17th on CBC from Calgary. As we get set for the second heat of the men's 4-man competition, it's held on the same weekend as the 2-man, 1 day later. And here are the standings after the first heat. The Germans dominating the top 4 positions, with Sandis Prusis of Latvia 1 hanging in 5th position. The Canadians a little further back. Pierre Lueders in 11th place right now, but Tom Samuels and Brian Zarski of Canada 2 and 3 well down the list. As we get set for the start, Canada 1, Pierre Lueders and his 4-man crew, and they're off.
Here at Eagles, the start is very flat. Pierre in the first run was 1/10 of a second behind the fastest start in the world, Christoph Langen.
A good start there on the second heat for the Canadians. Lueders becoming more adept at driving the 4-man machine, finishing 3rd last year in the 4-man standings on the World Cup circuit.
Pierre is a very experienced driver. He's a good driver. He knows that he can drive with the best of them. He has good equipment, but his frustration right now is that if his start is 1/10 of a second behind the best, it's hard to be in contention when you're that far back.
Oh, he had a swerve there, Chris.
Cheating a little bit out of corner 9, trying to steer the sled back on a straightaway. That will push him late into the labyrinths. Once you're late into the first labyrinth, you will be late into the following labyrinths. As you can see here, late into the final labyrinth, going into the finish corner.
And Lueders has the lead by 14/100ths of a second. But I think Ferriani wanted a bit more out of that sled. And will that time stand up with the big horses still to come on this course?
Of course, 9 more sleds to come, and he's going to have really put in a good one to stay in the hunt.
Lueders, though, looks excited with that run as the Canadians temporarily take the lead. He was 7th in the opening race in Altenburg and blamed the deteriorating ice for his sloppy driving.
You can see there coming late out of the corner number 11 and then late into corner 12. He steered way too hard and the back end slid sideways. That will cost him a lot of time going into the finish corner.
So there's the time to beat right now as Ahmed Marshall congratulates the pilot, Pierre Lueders, 53:01. Back to the top of the course, though, and this is an awesome team. Switzerland 3, Marcel Rohner, the pilot. He was the 4-man World Cup champion last season with 2 golds and 2 silver medals.
Marcel Rohner has been consistently among the top. This year he has a new crew. He's really starting to fight to stay in the top of the Swiss team. And there they are.
Oh, they got trouble here.
His crewman, his hand slipped off the push bar, which he uses as a support to get on the bale and load into the sled.
Chris, I think he's sitting backwards because we can only see 3 helmets. There are the legs
They
of the
dragged in the crewman from the side, and now he is sitting on top of his crewman in the sled. And that crewman, when those sleds are going through, for example, when they go through this corner right here, the Kreisel corner, they will be pulling 3 and 4 G-forces with 210 pounds sitting on top of you. Will be crushing his ribs.
Not to mention his spikes are now sticking into the arms of the brakeman as the Marcel Rohner 4-man crew struggle to get this ship righted, and they're in trouble now, trailing Pierre Lueders' time by nearly 6/10 of a second.
That's where it hurts, going through those labyrinths at the bottom. It's a very tight fit in there, and these guys are just climbing all over each other with spikes sticking in each other, and they're going to come out of there with some bruises for sure.
Well, they put the brakes on after what looked like a Keystone Cops display at the top of the course. There's the second crewman, prone, facing backwards.
His hand slipping off the push bar, throwing him off balance. and he was not able to get his foot on that small little bale that they used to step into the sled. And that way, at that point, they just want to grab him and get him in the sled, because if you don't have all four people in the sled, you will lose your points.
Even into the first turn, the push bar was still open, and they were still trying to settle themselves. And you can see even the ride was rough. They weren't centered in that sled.
There's no way you can get at the mechanism that brings the push bar back in when you're sitting in that position.
Well, an uncomfortable ride for the Swiss team, and not the time they were hoping for, as they cannot displace Pierre Luters from the lead. Back to the top. This is Bruno Migion of France 1. He had 2 gold medals last year in the 4-man competition, and is the bronze medalist from Nagano, Japan.
Bruno Migion from France, one of the physically smaller drivers on the World Cup circuit, weighing only about 180, 185 pounds.
They're in smartly, and their time, they have the lead overall by 9/100ths over Pierre Luters of Canada 1. And that start is so crucial in this event, isn't it?
His start is relatively slow, but it is very important, particularly on a track like Eagles, where the track is fairly easy and the start is flat and it's a short track. So the good drivers don't have a lot of opportunity to make up the time through good driving. And Migion is a good driver. As you'll see, he will slowly expand his lead as he gets toward the bottom.
They say that 1/10 of a second off the top can translate to 3/10 at the bottom with some good driving, and Bruno Migion, France 1, now has the lead, and it's growing over Pierre Luters of Canada 1. The Canadians watching on the screen at the bottom of the course. Oh, a bump there. But a good stop, 3/10 of a second. They clip off the time of Pierre Luters in Canada 1, so the Canadians have been knocked from the lead here in Heat 2 of this 4-man competition by the Frenchman and their pilot Bruno Migion.
Coming off of corner 9, had a little pressure on the end, pushing him across to the left, but still the sled was straight, so the hit won't affect him that much.
So Migion has the time to beat, 52.83 seconds, but still to come, some of the hotshot drivers on the tour on a beautiful day here in the Alps. Welcome back to the Visa World Cup Bobsleigh Tour as the crew for Germany 1 limbers up. There's Andre Lange, the young driver who won the World 4-man Championship 1 year ago in Altenburg, Germany. This is the team to watch. They bolt from the start. They have a huge push, and they've taken dead aim here at the time posted by Todd Hayes of the USA, currently the time to beat.
Todd Hayes putting in a very fast run to set the pace for the top teams. Now, the weather here in Eagles has been very itinerant. Just yesterday in the 2-man, the temperature was -6. Today it is +5. It's very confusing for the drivers when wanting to know what alloy to select for their runners, whether they want to use the runners that are most effective in warm ice or most effective in cold ice. And so today, if they were smart, they would show up with a set of runners prepared for both warm and cold, and based on the temperature 1 hour before the race.
And you can see the lights are now on the course. It's late in the afternoon. The drivers hoping that the sundown will help keep this ice in decent condition.
And the ice should, if it does get colder, the ice should maintain itself fairly well, but typically on the Eagles track, it does slow down considerably between the first and the second heat.
And young Andre Lange will dispatch the Americans swiftly, taking 11/100ths of a second off their combined time. So the Germans in Germany 1, Andre Lange, the young phenom who's pushing the veteran Christoph Langen in that German camp, has the lead.
And the other interesting thing to note is Todd Hayes of the USA, 11/100ths of a second out of a medal. So now we know that he is one of the top contenders and is very capable of competing with the best.
Lange, only 27 years of age, in the lead right now in Eagles. Back to the top, one of his fellow countrymen, Matthias Benisch, representing Germany 2. He's got Torsten Voss, the Olympic silver medalist in decathlon, on through. And a big push they have. Look at that, Chris.
Torsten Voss clearly being able to maintain his fitness since his Olympic medal in Seoul, 1988 in decathlon. That is amazing. The durability of Torsten Voss now taking on the sport of bobsleigh, where it beats you up a lot more than decathlon.
And Voss has helped Matthias Benisch to the lead. Good start, their second best in this heat, and the best time overall. They're leading now by 4/100ths of a second over young Andre Lange, also of Germany.
Here is Benish. Now the ice is definitely slowing. There is a lot of frost building up on the track, which tends to slow the sled down considerably. Having to keep nice, you have to keep straight lines. You can't be moving sideways like you did there out of corner 9.
Benish won the four-man competition in Altenburg to start the season. He's a late bloomer, a veteran at the age of 32, but he cracked the starting lineup for Germany, and at the finish, no, he will not overtake Andre Lange, finishing 12/100ths of a second behind him to sit in second place now.
That is another learning experience for Benish. You don't like to lose to your teammate by 12/100ths of a second like that, but when you know your teammate's the best in the world, then it's not that tough to take.
So the kids with the new hairdo, Lang and his crewmen have the lead as we take another look at that run from Benish.
Yeah, his back end had a little bit of pressure on the exit of 9. It pushed him sideways down going towards corner 10. That probably cost him the 12/100ths of a second that lost him that medal.
So Benish sitting in third spot. He actually drops behind Todd Hayes of the USA by 1/100th of a second. Still to come, this man, Martin Ahnen of Switzerland, won and his crew, the veteran Beat Hefty, his brakeman. Ahnen has been raising eyebrows all over the circuit. He was third in the two-man at Altenburg and fifth in the four-man. He was the world junior champion in both two-man and four-man just a year ago, and he's really starting quickly here today.
Powerful start on this flat track here at Eagles.
And the time, oh, a beautiful start, 4.98 seconds, and they're in the lead in the first 50 meters.
Now Ahnen is not looking at Benish right now or Todd Hayes. He is looking at Langen. He's really got to let the sled go and keep it straight on this frosty track.
And he's picking up the lead as he drives very smoothly. Oh, a swerve there. That'll cost him.
He steered too hard out of corner 6. His back end wanted to stay on the corner, and the pressure slid the back end of the sled off of the corner.
He's still in the lead, though, 21/100ths of a second, but having some trouble there, careening off the wall.
Again, steering too hard off of corner 9, which means that he's probably fighting the sled all the way down, which will cost you hundredths of seconds. Again, there in the labyrinth, steering too hard and too low.
At the finish, though, he will pip Andre Lange of Germany won by 0.2 of a second. Yes, Switzerland won, number 1 here in the second heat of this four-man competition.
The sled appeared very tight and very stiffly controlled as it moved down the track. You can see some sideways movement there and a late entrance into that corner.
Even so, young Martin Ahnen has the lead, 52.59. And there is just one sled to come here in Eagles, as Ahnen waits for the arrival of the four-time world champion from Germany. This is Christoph Langen and his team of Germany 3. The last run to go, darkness has fallen in Eagles. The ice has been deteriorating, but this team is known for an explosive start.
Christoph Langen is so powerful in the four-man event. In the first heat, starting as Germany 3, he started the 16th sled.
And don't forget, Chris, he missed the first event of the season in Altenburg with a hamstring injury. He's back, and they look sharp here. The time, the best of the day, 4.96, and the lead.
That speed will carry him. He knows he has some cushion, and he knows also that starting 16th in the first heat still came down with the fastest time, that he has cushion because now he is on equal footing in terms of the ice conditions for the second heat, and he is well ahead and well on his way to winning this race.
Little bump there, though, and the ice is looking rutty.
He knows he has to drive just a nice, smooth run to win this race. There he goes into corner 9. Beautiful exit out of corner 9. With that clean exit, that should take his speed right through to the bottom and could win this race.
Final few turns, Martin Ahnen of Switzerland looking on. Here comes Christoph Langen of Germany 3. He does it!
Christoph Langen, 0.2 of a second, wins the World Cup after coming off that hamstring injury.
Tremendous return to the circuit for Christoph Langen, the four-time world champion. Back after the hamstring injury and back on top. Tremendous drive here in Heat 2 to capture the gold medal in Eagles Austria.
It is times like this that team will really bond. Coming out, Germany 3, 16th starting position, back to the top of the podium.
Yes, the veteran Christoph Langen of Germany knocking the rookie Martin Ahnen off the top with the final drive of the day. 1:44.19 the winning time. In third place, Andre Lange of Germany won. For Canada, Pierre Lueders, Canada won, dropping to 10th place at 1:14 off the pace.
Well, it's actually quite amusing because everybody thinks now that we're strong on the four-man, and you know, since Ivo's been the coach, people are saying he's a four-man coach, but finally we have a coach that says you can drive the two-man and the four-man the same, and that's exactly what I've been waiting for years, is to have someone tell me that just drive them the same. And if you look at the results, we've been getting stronger and stronger since the Olympics in the four-man, and also particularly last season since Ivo arrived, the four-man has been really really getting strong. And again, I've have a new crew or some new people, but again, we'll work towards the World Championships, and that's where we need to be at our peak.
When we come back, we will flash back to a founding era for Canadian bobsleigh, a return to Innsbruck in the Winter Games of 1964, to Canada's first bobsleigh Olympic gold medal, a moment still etched in the mind of this man. Welcome back to the Visa World Cup Bobsleigh Tour from majestic Eagles, Austria. The site back in 1976 of the Olympic Winter Games, and of course before that in 1964 they raced in Innsbruck as well. Canada's Pierre Lueders getting set for the second and final heat of the two-man competition, racing in a place today that is steeped in Canadian history and excellence in bobsleigh. The past and the present meet at a crossroads. The Olympic bobsleigh track in Calgary is a place that brings back memories of a bygone era for Doug Anakin. A time when hairpin curves and breakneck speed combined for a record Canadian achievement. Doug Anakin held on tight that day when Vic Emery drove to victory at the 1964 Innsbruck Winter Games. It was Canada's first Olympic gold medal in bobsleigh, and it was the first time Canada had ever entered a sled in Olympic competition. Back then, there were no state-of-the-art tracks in this country like the one built for the 1988 Calgary Winter Games. That Olympic legacy helped to produce the two-man champions of Nagano in 1998. Pierre Lueders and Dave McEachran captured the gold in a modern era of high-tech equipment and full-time athletes. 34 years separate the Olympic milestones of Doug Anakin and Dave McEachran, but they share an approach to this sport that spans the test of time.
In Innsbruck, that was the old track. Was it like, was it steep or flat?
It was pretty steep. It was, what percent would it be?
Like the gradient?
Yeah.
But now it's probably one of the flattest.
Both Anakin and McEachran were brakemen, putting the push in the start of every race. In fact, Anakin and his crew were innovators for the next generation of bobsledders like McEachran. The Canadian champions of 1964 introduced the push-start technique that prevails today on the World Cup circuit.
What Peter, Doug, Vic, and John did 35 years ago was they started a trend in the sport where there wasn't just a matter of a driver going out and finding, you know, three guys to sit in the back of the sled. You know, they were pioneers in that they began to push the sled off the top of the hills, and they were the first athletes to step up to the bat and say, okay, we can go a lot faster if we push. And with that trend, you know, that's where the sport is now, and it's such a massive part of the sport, and that's, you know, that's how they won their gold medal. It was because of their starting innovation.
Well, I'm certainly glad that we got gold medals in 2 and 4. And
yeah, we got it covered this year.
Yeah.
Mine's starting to wear a bit around here. You can see some of the edges, some of the glister starting to wear off it a bit. I've had probably about 65,000 people touch my medal.
That's right.
I did about 25,000 school kids and a whole bunch of tours, and everything from shopping centers to airplanes. So a lot of people have touched it, but I guess that's part of the beauty of having this, is letting other people touch it and perhaps inspire it.
Back in Eagles, Austria, here are the standings in the two-man competition after the first heat. The Germans and Swiss still dominating. They've got the top 5 positions right now with young Martin Ahnen in the lead. Pierre Lueders of Canada won is 63/100ths of a second back. Tom Samuels and Brian Sarski are well down the list, and the conditions have gotten worse here. It's mild 6 degrees, the air temperature, fog in the air, as Pierre Lueders and Ken LeBlanc get set to go with Canada 1.
I'm sure neither Pierre or Ken were pleased with the start on the first run at 5:18.
Carbon copy.
Actually, and you know what? When Ken loaded into the sled, he probably ran a little bit too long, and the back end of the sled slid across just before going into that first corner. And that should be reflected in the first split.
Right now, Canada 1, Pierre Lueders in the lead by 7/100ths of a second, ahead of the best previous time set by Switzerland 3 and Christian Reich, who won the two-man World Cup title last season.
Not only was their start a 5:18, which is behind, but in the first split, you could see the reflection of that error made going into the first corner, and he's going to have to really drive well to come back from that type of mistake.
Chrissy's losing time now, even with Reich, as he watches from the bottom of the course. And at the finish, here comes Pierre Lueders. Can he do it? Yes! Oh, and just barely. Lueders bumping Christian Reich by 1/100th of a second. That's close, says Ivo Ferriani, the Canadian head coach. But will it stand up with some very fast sleds still to come?
Well, the start was a little bit weak, but he did drive well in the bottom part of the course, being able to keep him in contention in the top 10.
So Lueders is happy as he congratulates his brakeman, Ken LeBlanc. Let's have another look at that run.
He was late entering into these corners, and you see the back end of the sled lift up, move sideways, and that will reflect in your time at the finish.
Foggy conditions for the Canadians. As we mentioned, it's very mild here right now, above zero, 6 degrees, and the track conditions will begin to worsen as Lueders holds the lead, but just barely 1/100th ahead of Christian Reich of Switzerland 3. To the top, this is Gunther Huber of Italy 1, who shared the gold medal in the two-man competition at the Nagano Olympic Winter Games with Pierre Lueders. Now, Huber is a veteran. He battled pneumonia last year. He's fit and ready for another season on the World Cup Tour.
And Gunther Huber here with his brakeman, his gold medal brakeman, Antonio Tartaglia. Huber, too, has the challenge of being one of the smaller pilots on the circuit. His start's not always that strong, but you can be guaranteed that he will drive very proficiently throughout the course.
It's the 6th best start of the second heat, but it's good enough to put him in the lead overall here early on this course at Eagles.
Gunther Huber makes very few mistakes when driving down the track. You will see that his time will only get better and better as he moves down the track.
Yes, he's open a 9/100ths of a second lead now on Pierre Lueders of Canada 1.
He's driving very good lines, a nice crossover into Kreisel, the 270-degree turn through corner 8 and 9. Corner 9, the toughest corner on the track. Beautiful straight line into corner 10. He will make up a lot of time on his competitors through that section.
That lead now dwindling to 6/100ths as they come to the finish. There's Lueders and LeBlanc watching from the finish area. And they're bumped. Gunther Huber, 6/100ths of a second better than Pierre Lueders of Canada 1 to move into the lead here in the late stages of the second and final heat of the two-man competition.
Gunther Huber, you see him in this corner here coming out of corner 9. Nice and straight, middle to right-hand side, going into corner 10. That's exactly where you want to be.
Huber has the lead, but the top Swiss and German sleds are still to come in Heat 2. When we come back, no pain, no gain, no fear. A highlight from Jeff Payne on the Skeleton Tour. Back to the Visa World Cup Bobsleigh Tour from Eagles, Austria. As we continue our coverage of the two-man competition, this was the scene earlier this season from Winterberg, Germany at the World Skeleton World Cup event. Jeff Payne of Calgary taking off here in his second and final run. In a dangerous-looking sport, Chris, 120 kilometers an hour these men reached, their faces inches off the ice, and sliding at what amounts to a cafeteria tray.
And sometimes their faces are a lot closer than inches to the ice. In fact, in the high-pressure corners, their faces effectively scrape on the ice. The chin portion of their helmet will scrape on the ice. And there's Jeff Payne through the finish.
Yes, a tremendous margin of victory, 68/100ths of a second for Jeff Payne of Calgary. He wins the gold medal in men's skeleton in Winterberg, Germany. The former bobsledder turned skeleton driver has a championship here on the circuit.
A lot of hard work, a lot of good preparation in the last week and the week before. A lot of training runs, and just had a good day.
Great day for Jeff Payne, and a reminder, we will have full coverage of the World Skeleton Championships from Calgary on Saturday, March the 10th. As we go back to the final heat of the two-man competition, this is young Andre Lange of Germany won. And a good start, and the lead by 14/100ths of a second early here on the course.
Again, Lange setting the pace for the top drivers. He is only 3/100ths of a second out of a medal possibility behind his teammate, Rene Spies.
Right now, he's chasing the time to beat posted by Evgeny Popov of Russia 1. And Lange, who won the World Four-Man Championship last year in Altenburg, came second in the two-man, asserting himself in his first full season on the tour.
His transitions have been very, very nice. Slight correction there out of corner 9. As he moves to the bottom part of the track, he's been driving nice, smooth lines, letting the sled run freely through the corners and only controlling it where he needs to control it.
A tremendous drive by Andre Lange as he pushes the Russians off the lead by 14/100ths of a second. Now, Lange was second last week in Altenburg, looking for his first win on the tour, and he is one of the bright lights to look for this season.
There he is coming out of corner 9 again, came out a bit too soon, and the back end got pushed off of the corner because the pressure kept the back end on the corner and had to slide off at the exit.
27-year-old German, hoping that he's got enough with 3 sleds to go, including Rene Spies of Germany 2, the winner in Altenburg in the two-man competition, and they're off.
You know, the Germans have such a plethora of powerful crewmen to select from as their two-man brakemen that they all have strong starts.
Spies was up and down from the minors, so to speak, in the German program. He's up this year and looking very good with that start, winning in Altenburg.
And he is consistently going to be in the top 5, consistently a contender not only in the world, but of course within his own country. Now imagine you have to be top 5 in the world just to make the team of your own country.
Now there are 3 German sleds in the final 4 here to come. Christoph Langen lying in wait at the top of the course. Right now, though, it's Rene Spies with the lead.
And a phenomenal exit out of corner 9, pushing him straight into corner 10, setting up nicely for the lower portion of the track. The sled is very stable, running nice, smooth entrances and smooth exits out of the corners.
Oh, yes, really flying. And so Rene Spies will knock off young Andre Lange and take the lead by 13/100ths. So the guy who won it in Altenburg is sitting in the lead with 2 sleds to go here in Eagles, Austria.
That was the best driving that I have seen today, and he is definitely going to push the final 2 sleds to come down. Teammate Christoph Langen, and of course, Swiss Martin Annen.
Hardly excited at all, Rene Spies of Germany. The Germans in large numbers here in Austria, looking on as the veteran Christoph Langen, the 4-time world champion, gets set for his second and final run. He'll have Marco Jacobs in the back seat. 2 big men who can really move this 500-pound sled.
2 very big men, both well over 100 kilos, which means the maximum weight per total sled, including the athletes in the sled, is 390 kilos, which means the more weight that is on their bodies in functional mass means that the sled is lighter. So not only do they have more functional mass, they have a lighter sled to push and will lend for faster starts. Just like this, they kill them with a 5-second start, 5 seconds even.
Fastest start of the day for Christoph Langen of Germany 3.
He knows with that start advantage, if he drives smoothly to the top part of the track, the momentum will carry him, so he will be allowed a couple of small mistakes at the bottom. Again, in the first heat, he started in the 18th starting position and was able to get right up to the front, even from coming that far back, which is truly the sign of a great competition on the go.
Yes, his start position suffering because he missed the first with that leg injury.
And then in the German system, they just put him back, so he had to reprove himself even as world champion.
So the ice isn't great, but look at the time. First by 27/100ths, and Rene Spies is moved off the leaderboard.
You can see the mistakes of the top drivers come to a minimum, and he has really put the pressure on Martin Annen of Switzerland next to come.
So Langen looking for the double. He's already won the 4-man competition, and with 1 sled to go, young Martin Annen of Switzerland, Christoph Langen is the leader in the 2-man competition. What a comeback to the circuit after missing in Altenburg for the great champion of Germany. To the top, though, this is the kid, Martin Annen, with the veteran brakeman Beat Hefty.
Martin Annen looking very composed at the start. The thing about Martin Annen is being a newcomer to the World Cup circuit, it's so comfortable when you're up with the champions.
That's the second best start of the heat, but he has the overall lead based on his first heat performance.
He is within striking distance, but again, he knows that he had the ice advantage in the first heat and that he will have to put in a near perfect run to beat Langen.
Yes, it's the last sled of the day. Mild conditions, the ice has been taking a beating. How will young Martin Annen, the junior champion from 1 year ago, drive it today? He's got the lead by 11/100ths now.
And he has nice smooth transition into corner 9 and beautiful down into corner 10. So he knows that he's running a nice clean run and that he will have a shot at the gold medal.
Christoph Langen looking on nervously. Here comes Martin Annen. The final few seconds. He's got it.
1/100th of a second on the run and 900ths of a second overall. The start advantage definitely put him in position to win the gold. If Christoph Langen was in the first group, it really would have been close.
Young Martin Annen, the 2000 World Junior Champion, winning his first ever World Cup two-man competition convincingly here on the final drive of the day in Eagles, Austria, already making a case this season that he will be a force to be reckoned with at the World Championships later this season from St. Moritz, which we will have Saturday on March the 3rd. But to look at the overall standings in the two-man competition, it is Annen in first place at 1:46.23, 9/100ths back the veteran Christoph Langen of Germany, and in third another German representing Germany 2, René Spies. For Pierre Luders of Canada 1, well, a free fall for him, a winner last year, 10th today.
When you add a 0 to the 1, that makes 10. So that's it was a tough day. We had problems at the start. We're still sort of searching for the, for the race fitness that we've had in the past. We just didn't come into the season in the form that we wanted to be. We're lacking the high competition and the high pressure races that I used to have when Chris Laurie was in the program. That's the fact. And it's unfortunate that we have to start in the World Cups at a weaker level, but we're going to fight through, and I think by the by the World Championships we'll be strong.
So it's back to the drawing board for the Canadians as we look at the two-man standings. The young pilots have the early jump this season. Spies and Annen tied for first at 68 points. Andre Lange of Germany in third at 64. In the four-man standings, it's Lange in first right now with 66 points, just 2 ahead of fellow countryman Matthias Benisch. The top Canadian Pierre Luders in 8th. We'll return after this. Now, Pierre Luders was telling us, Chris, before the break that he didn't feel as prepared as he should have been coming into this World Cup season because he doesn't have someone of your caliber to train with back home in Calgary. What do you make of that?
Right now, Pierre is the lone soldier in the Canadian camp because his only reference point is 20th and 25th place. Now, when Pierre and I were competing against each other, we both knew that in the off-season, if we were close to each other in physical preparedness, that we would step onto the World Cup circuit as one of the best teams. And Pierre doesn't have that reference point, so he steps on the World Cup circuit now and realizes that he's a little bit behind in preparation, but they have had some injury problems as well.
And Martin Annen, 1 year ago, he's a junior. This year, he's winning. Are you surprised at that, then?
That doesn't surprise me at all because you look at the other Swiss, and they're all in the top 5, top 10, and of course, Martin Annen, he's competing against that in the summertime and steps right into the top of the world.
All right, Chris, our next bobsleigh event takes us into the new year from the Olympic track in Cortina, Visa World Cup competition on Saturday, January 27th. At 2 Eastern this afternoon, Glasgow.
Please. For a year, a new champion is crowned from among the world's best in the bobsleigh. The contenders include Canada's Pierre Luders. He's the defending two-man Olympic champion, but this season has been anything but golden. He's looking to turn his season around. Christoph Langen is 38 years old and the defending Olympic four-man champ. He missed the first race of the series of World Cup Bobsleigh from Königssee, where the Germans are hoping home course advantage serves them well. I'm Mark Conley with Chris Laurie, and Chris, the phenom this year on the circuit has to be Martin Annan of Switzerland.
Marty Annan did not arrive at the top of the World Cup by accident. He started out when he was young as a crewman, got to learn the sport and all of the tracks first as a crewman. Then he decided to take on the enormous challenge of becoming a driver. Had to go back to the tracks, learn all of the tracks as a driver, went to the Europa Cup circuit, moved himself up the ranks in the Europa Cup circuit, and now has cracked the Swiss team. And when you crack the Swiss team, you find yourself in contention every race in every World Cup.
And there is a Canadian connection to this story as well. Hans Hildebrandt, the former Canadian head coach, is now with the Swiss, and you can give him a lot of credit with their success.
Absolutely. Hans Hildebrandt is the best driving coach in all of bobsleigh. He has a very strong ability to be able to translate the movements of the sled to the mistakes that you're making on the track and give you that feedback so that you can go back to the top of the track, make the adjustments for the next training heat or race heat.
On the other hand, Pierre Luters and the Canadian team have struggled this year. Can we look back and see Hans Hildebrandt leaving and having some effect on the Canadian team?
To some degree, yes. Ivo Ferriani is a different coach than Hans, but Hans also brought to the program and to Pierre a brand new two-man sled every year, which Pierre still drives. Now, Hans is not around to fix that sled for Pierre, so he can't rectify damage to the sled just overnight.
Well, Pierre Luters and Ken LeBlanc looking to come back from a poor showing so far. We'll be seeing two events today, the 4 and the 2-man competitions, plus a couple of special features with Chris Laurie called Bob Speed. It's a gorgeous day in Königssee. Thousands of German fans have flocked to see their teams compete, and it is above zero. How will that affect the competition, Chris?
The temperature of the air and the ice can have an effect on the selection that the drivers make for their runner blades and what type of steel they want to use that will be fastest in these conditions.
Well, let's have a look at the course. You've been down this many a time.
The start is very short. In fact, it's only about 45, 50 meters before that first change in direction you see right there. It's a flat top. Here you see going into the first corner, and then you enter the famous S curves. 4 consecutive corners with no straightaway in between them. You have to be high early in each of the S corners, and a small challenge coming out of the 4th S into a long straightaway, which actually does bend slightly. You'll see the sled go off 2 walls before setting themselves up into the long 360-degree Kreisel curve. Many pressure changes through the Kreisel into the chicane, and here you see the most dangerous corner, Kufstein, which many sleds will roll into if they enter too late. Here the finish corner, C curve, a lot of pressure, about 5 Gs in that corner, into the final smaller corner and through the finish.
The course is equal for all competitors, and so are the sleds. They almost conform to strict length, width, and weight measurements.
The 2-man and the 4-man are very similar in construction. However, of course, the length, the 2-man only houses 2 people and 4-man 4 people. The 4-man runner blades will be longer and the runner carriers will be longer, and it'll be built a little more strongly because, of course, it does have to bear the weight of 4 220-pound athletes.
Ready for the first run of the 2-man, and up first is Germany 1, René Spies with Franz Sagmeister. And when you talk about big men, Sagmeister's 110K, 242 pounds. That's a big man.
The Germans build big people. They seem to flock to bobsleigh. And it's a good partner for René Spies because René Spies is actually one of the smaller pilots for Germany. And he certainly has moved up in the starts as he's progressed through the years here in this sport.
In the bottom right-hand side of the picture, you'll see the start time for this crew, and we'll see how fast they are. France 1 went first ahead of them, and they are 17/100ths of a second ahead of their start time.
René Spies had a small challenge in that first change in direction, and I think you'll see that with a lot of the sleds if they can manage that change in direction so that they can get early into the first corner.
You'll see again another split time. There are 4 split times all the way down the track, and if you see negative numbers, you know they're going faster than the sleds ahead of them.
You want to watch the lines of the Germans here on this track. Of course, it's a home track for them, particularly Langen, who is from Berchtesgaden just down the street.
And so far, Spies is doing very well. He's improving on the times of the sleds in front of him, and he is in first place at the split time. Here they come through to the end, and Germany 1 in a time of 47.65 is in the lead.
Rene Spiess will set the pace for the rest of the field. Of course, being a German and knowing this track very well.
Let's have a look at their start.
You can see the big man in back. He has to know exactly when his last, most powerful stride is before entering into the sled, so he doesn't hold it back or cause any sideways movement.
So Spiess in first place so far and looking very good with a time of 47.65. Everyone else will take a run at that. Here is Germany 2, Andre Lange and Kevin Kuski. And they'll be going for a fast start as well. The start's so important in these races.
The start is one critical component of three. You've got the start is very important, the equipment, that is the runner blades and the chassis and the aerodynamics of the sled, and of course the driving. All three are critical to fast times at the bottom.
And Germany 2, 2/100ths of a second behind the start of Germany 1.
In these S corners, the timing and the rhythm through these S curves is very important, and it takes a lot of runs down this track to really nail that and get a lot of speed going into that straightaway to set you up for the bottom section of the course.
Lange has had 2 second-place finishes so far this year, so he has been in contention.
Here he is at the bottom section, a lot of pressure going into this final curve, and the exit is kind of tricky. You will see some sleds moving a little bit late into the last corner.
And he comes in at 47.8, 51/100ths of a second behind his German teammates. And all the way down in the split times, you could see he was trailing most of the way.
Andre Lange, off a similar start time to Rene Spiess, seemed to have lost some time at the top of the track. Here you see the ghost image of Rene Spiess, the sled in front, and Lange behind him already having lost some time.
And we'll see that on replays all through this broadcast where we show you the lead sled and the sled underway at the same time. Now we are ready for Canada 1. Pierre Lueders and Ken LeBlanc. They've been having a tough season so far, but Lueders with 16 World Cup victories and the defending Olympic champion in the two-man has what it takes to go to victory.
It is extremely important that Pierre and Ken put in a fast heat on this, the first run. They have to get over the hump of the struggles that they've had this year.
And here on their start, where famously they've been very, very quick, they're only third fastest, so that does not bode well for their run.
He came out of that change of direction very nicely, actually. He's a little bit late going into the fourth S, and you don't want that, because if you go late into the first one, it tends to push you late and late and later into the final 3 S's. The hits that you see on that straightaway are perfectly natural. There are 2 hits that you will take before setting yourself up for this Kreisel corner. Pressure controlling him a little bit, probably letting the pressure move the sled a little bit too much through Kreisel.
6/100ths of a second back at the last interval.
Very nice out of C curve exit right along the right wall, exactly where you want to be to finish this course.
47.73, and Coach Ivo Ferriani likes that. They look pretty good so far.
It is motivating when you get to the bottom and you see that your time is very close to the top competitors, particularly the Germans and their home track. There you see the ghost image of Rene Spiess, the German, and Pierre just behind him, in fact, holding very nicely and very closely to the German.
So Canada 1 currently in second position with a time of 47.73, but there are still plenty of the world's best to come as the first run of this Visa World Cup bobsleigh continues. We'll be right back.
All you need are Canadian bobsleigh teams.
There's Canada 2, the sled being loaded for their first run.
The sled has to be lifted by crane over the top of the track because originally this is a luge track and they built in the bobsleigh start later on and had to be able to accommodate bringing the sleds to the start.
It is a gorgeous area here in Germany, and there is Switzerland too getting ready for their run. Martin Annen, Beat Hefty, and they are currently the World Cup leaders in the two-man standings.
You see them cleaning the shoes so that they can have very good grip while pushing the sled. And look at the size of the legs of the pushers. The athletes in this sport have to be very powerful, very strong legs, explosive strength, and of course, fast sprinters. Now, the typical athlete in this sport, for example, the average power clean, for example, which is a lift where you lift the weight from the ground up to your shoulders in one explosive lift. The average for the Canadian team is 300 pounds for the power clean, and you can see it because they have to push these sleds which weigh 500-600 pounds.
And they've got off to a good start, beating the best start so far by 1/100 of a second. I'd say hefty is a very good name for a brakeman.
And when you consider the size of his legs, it certainly is appropriate. Going through the Kreisel, carrying a nice line, letting the sled run through Kreisel, establishing the line early so that the pressure pushes him through on a nice straight line through the Kreisel.
And you can see the times there that Annan is picking up time on Germany 1 as he comes through to the finish. His time will be 47.59, 6/100ths of a second in front of the quickest time before.
Marty Annan struggled a little bit through the S-curves, a little bit low through there, and lost some speed going into the long straightaway and flattened out his time at the bottom.
Annan, though, still in contention, though. He is the fastest time so far. The first run, of course, sets everybody up for where they'll chase the leaders in the second run. And Switzerland, too, in first place. Martin Annan, our leader so far in the World Cup standings, and he is a cheesemaker by profession, but I'm sure he's making a lot of dough on this circuit.
He's a cheesemaker, all right, but there's no holes in this Swiss performance.
On to Germany 3, Christoph Langen and Marcus Zimmermann. And here are a couple of veterans of the circuit, 38 years old and 36 years old, respectively. They've been around as long as you have.
They've, look at the size of them. They're just big, powerful men. And when you look at the size of these fellas, it's all functional mass, it's all strength pushing the sled. So when you have the mass in functional mass on your body, you can lighten up the sled, you can take weight out of the sled. So not only do you have the strength and mass in your body, but you're also pushing a lighter sled.
These two veterans have been around a long time. They won bronze in the two-man in Nagano and gold in the four-man.
This is Langen's home track. He lives just down the street from here, and you can see the way he managed Kreisel going in his Kufstein. And in the big finish corner, there's a lot of pressure in that corner. He probably steered off a little bit too hard as you saw the back end get pushed back by the pressure.
But he still has the fastest time so far by 7/100ths of a second, 47.52 for Germany 3.
Christoph Langen can expect nothing but the best from himself on this track. He came out of Kreisel as well, a little bit too strong. He's maybe, I mean, he's an experienced driver and he shouldn't have the jitters, but he's just driving a little bit too aggressively. Maybe he still has not made the adjustment after driving that aggressive course in Treviño and moving on to this course where you need much softer hands.
And you can see the double image there. His sled slightly behind the lead sled at that point, but he made up the time a little later. So Christoph Langen in first place so far. Now we're ready for Canada 2. Brian Zarski, who grew up in Edmonton. John Sokolowski from Miramichi, New Brunswick.
Now let's watch Brian Zarski. He is a new pilot on the World Cup circuit, and here you'll see the difference between the less experienced drivers on these tracks. It's very important that the drivers get a lot of experience on every track. You go for the first time, it's very unfamiliar to you. You have to get accustomed to the track and the speed and the rhythm of the corners, and you only perfect that through repeatedly going back to that track and really getting to know the track as an animal. You go into a dance with the track each time that you drive it, and each time that you go into it, you just perfect each one. Steering too hard off of the fourth S, you saw the pressure pull the back of the sled back to the left-hand side.
Now, a lot of bobsledders are former football players because you've got that linebacker speed, a lot of fullbacks. But Brian Zarski, in fact, is a former hockey player, played with the St. Albert Saints in the Alberta Junior Hockey League.
I think Brian is probably going to have to work on his speed a little bit. His starts are somewhat weak in comparison to the rest of the World Cup field. It'll take him some time, but also it's an indication of the lack of the depth on the Canadian team to have a very good pusher for Canada's #2 driver.
But Brian Zarski will get a lot of experience this year as he's scheduled to be in all the World Cup races, and that will do him a lot of good.
And you see him there, he steered too hard off of that first change in direction, and that kept the back of the sled wanting to hold on to the wall. He just has to let it ride up a little bit there.
And there's the double image with the lead sled, and Zarski at that point was pretty even with him. 18th place right now for Brian Zarski, a time of 48.65. It's always a fine line, I guess, Chris, between letting the sled run and doing a little bit of steering.
You can see a sled moving through a corner, but one driver may be controlling it a little bit more than another driver.
And here's Switzerland 3. The driver here is Christian Reich, and he's got a lot of experience on the World Cup circuit. He would be a driver who's done a lot of this.
He knows this track very well. He's got a lot of experience. He's been to this track, 20, 25, 30 times. So he knows how to drive the sled very well. And what you do in these corners is you take the pressure point at very specific points in the corner and you drive precisely so that you're not creating too much drag from oversteering the sled.
Christian Reich won here last year, one of his 3 victories en route to the 2-man World Cup title.
He's flowing very nicely through the Kreisel corner. You can see the sled is just loose and he's just letting the sled run. He's coming from a very late start number, so he's got to battle the deteriorating track conditions, but he just let the sled run through the track so nicely, and you can see that he's now taking the lead.
By 1/100th of a second. Boy, that's a tight one. Christian Reich in Switzerland 3, and he's celebrating. They know they're in first place right now. That puts them in good position for the second run.
When you come out of the 19th starting position and take the lead, you know you've got reserve for the second heat, as you see him here down the long straightaway, just letting the sled float through the corners. There he is in comparison to the ghost sled, Langen, the orange one. Reich is the yellow sled, and he will actually pass Langen on the bottom section of the track to take him by 1/100th of a second.
So it sets things up nicely for the second run. Switzerland 3 in first place by only 1/100th of a second over Germany 3. Switzerland 2 in third place. Pierre Lueders in 5th, 22/100ths of a second behind, and Canada 2 in 27th place at this point. We still have 4-man action and the second run of the 2-man bobsleigh as Pierre Lueders and Canada 1 continue their quest in the Visa World Cup bobsleigh.
You think that's something? Yeah. One time.
We call it Bob Speed, a look behind the scenes at bobsleigh and a little bit into the history.
Like anything, the sport of bobsleigh has evolved. Here you see this footage from the 1940s. All of the tracks back then were built of natural ice, carved right into the mountain, built from snow and ice. Of course, the equipment not quite as fast back then. And here you see the openness of the sleds, the driver steering with a steering wheel, whereas now they use ropes for the fine, sensitive feeling to get in the high-pressure corners. And look at the open face curves, which these guys are crazy. It's very dangerous. The corners are open, and if you start going too fast, you could fly out of the track, as you see here. And that's gotta hurt because trees don't move.
We're ready now for the 4-man competition. After the first run, the Germans are in the first 3 positions. Germany 2 with Matthias Benisch in first place, 15/100ths of a second ahead of Christoph Langen. Pierre Lueders in Canada 1 back in 11th. They've got a ways to go to get into the top 5. Ready for the second run of Germany 1, Andre Lange, Lars Behrendt, René Hoppe, and Karsten Embach.
You see the snow flying off their spikes. They're just digging in at the start. Karsten Embach at the back of the sled, formerly longtime brakeman for the great Wolfgang Hoppe.
Now, Chris, we see the four-man sled here, obviously much bigger than the two-man. What's the difference between driving the two?
Actually, as you see here in the S curves, it's very tight for the four-man because it is a longer sled and a heavier sled. Your driving has to be more precise because once you give that big, heavy four-man sled its direction, it's very hard to change it back if you make a mistake, particularly in this corner here, Kufstein.
Here comes Germany 1. They look to be going very fast as they come here through to the finish. Andre Lange in first place by 1/10 of a second with a total time of 1:34.01 for their two runs.
It's all about Germany here going for the medals because this track is so technical and the Germans know this track so well. They're battling it out for the podium spots.
And Andre Lange knows he'll be going against his countrymen for those podium finishes. Up next is Germany 3. Christoph Lange and Marcus Zimmermann, who are together in the two-man, along with Sven Peter and Alex Metzger.
Christoph Lange again with a very big, very weighty crew. A couple of years ago, he was 5 kilos overweight after winning the World Cup here in Königssee. Went on the scales, was 5 kilos overweight. You're allowed to once take it off, clean off anything that did not that happened throughout the course of the run, go back on the scales. You're allowed 1 try. He was still overweight for 3 more tries. They recalibrated the sled. He finally came in 1 kilo under, and they gave him the win over countryman Wolfgang Hoppe.
And that pushed you back to 4th place, but you're not bitter.
We were 4th by 1/100th of a second. I probably should have just driven better anyway. I could have found a 100th somewhere.
Well, Christoph Langen's finding a lot of hundreds in this run as he looks like he is picking up a lot of speed and a lot of time on Germany 1.
Christoph Langen driving very smoothly throughout this course. He knows this track so well and has put a lot of pressure on Matthias Benisch, who's now going to go for the win.
Langen in first position right now, 46.84 on that run. And here is Matthias Benisch with his crew of Torsten Voss, Udo Lehmann, Alexander Zielig, and they are Germany 2.
Matthias Benisch made selection with his crew. He has now inherited Harold Chudai's crew. Harold Chudai, former Olympic champion, did not make selection this year, but I guess they saw that Chudai's crew would be faster for Matthias Benisch here in this race.
And he had quite a cushion coming into this race. All he has to do is maintain his speed, and he'll remain number 1. You can see 17/100ths of a second already in the combined lead.
To keep the four-man on a nice straight line through Kreisel here is very difficult because of the weight of the four-man and the pressure changes that occur through the corner. He's driving very well at this point. Certainly will be able to maintain his lead if he keeps this up.
Benisch coming through to the finish here, and he is 21/100ths of a second ahead of Germany 3. So Matthias Benisch and his crew of Germany 2 have won this four-man competition.
And the dominance of the Germans in this race, there are 15,000 happy, cheering German fans on the sidelines of this track here in Königssee.
Matthias Benisch and his crew celebrating, and there's Andre Lange, who drives Germany 1, coming in to congratulate them. So it is a German sweep in the four-man competition. In first place, Matthias Benisch and his Germany 2 crew, and they give a big cheer here at the finish line. Germany 3 and Christoph Langen in second place, and Germany 1 with Andre Lange in third. Pierre Lueders in Canada 1 over a second behind, back in 13th place. Chris, that's another big disappointment for Canada.
Pierre's been having some challenges with his crew, some injured crewmen, as you see here, trying to get comfortable with each other. The new crew, not really efficient on the loading.
The overall standings have Andre Lange of Germany in first place with his teammate Matthias Benisch now right behind him, and Martin Annan of Switzerland in third. Pierre Lueders of Canada back in 10th place in the World Cup four-man standings. But Lueders still has high hopes for the two-man bobsleigh and will return with the second run of this competition from Königssee after this. Pilots and crew, their day starts a lot earlier, as we learn in this edition of Chris Laurie's Bob Speed.
In the sport of bobsleigh, the athletes do all of the work. These athletes are not prima donnas. They have to do all the work from carrying the sleds to the top of the track, back to the hotel, offloading them into the garage, flipping them over, and doing the work overnight to prepare themselves for the competition the next day. Here you see the runner blades. They've spent hours polishing these blades from a very low grid sandpaper to a very high glossy polish used with a high speed wheel. Now it is about 40 minutes before the race. They're mounting the runners on the sled, which have to be mounted by 1/2 hour before their group is set to go. All work has to be completed. These are the crewmen taking the tissue off the highly polished runners. You don't want anything touching the running surface of those runners before the race. The crewman working on the sled while the driver is off, thinking about the race, thinking about the rhythm of the track, and getting himself mentally prepared for this race.
And here are the standings after run 1. The time difference on the right is the time the trailing sleds have to make up on the leader. And they go from slowest to fastest. And as you can see, Canada 2 back in 27th spot has a long way to go. And this will be a good training run for Brian Zarski. And here we have Switzerland 1, Reto Gucci and Cedric Grand, 2nd overall in the 2-man World Cup.
Reto Gucci, the Olympic silver medalist, 1994 in Lillehammer. Now the driver has to go from being very aggressive at the start. Once completing the push, he sits into the sled, and it's nice to have time to take a nice deep breath so that you can set yourself up for the timing of the track, because you have to be very speed of the sled. All of these senses come into play to driving the sled fast down the track.
And you see the timing on the right-hand lower part of the screen. It is the total time of the 2 runs. And at this point, Russia 1 has the fastest combined time. Switzerland 1, though, is picking up speed as Gucci goes down the track.
He is putting in a better run than he did on the first run. Through Kreisel, he let it move a little bit too much, letting the pressure control him.
And it is Switzerland 1 coming in with the lead at this point, 28/100ths of a second in front of the pack.
He's going to set the pace for the top 6 sleds. And of course, Pierre Luder is going to have to contend with Reto Gucci after putting in a fine run here in the 2nd heat.
And all the sleds following him, of course, will have gone faster in the first run.
Gucci in the yellow sled, the ghost image is the Russian in the white. As you can see, Gucci is well ahead, and he's got a nice high position coming off the exit of Kreisel to give him speed out of that corner.
So Switzerland 1 and Reto Gucci in first place after 2 runs so far. At the top of the run is Andre Lange and Kevin Kuski, the 6th fastest in the first run. They are Germany 2.
Andre Lange looking to put the pressure on Pierre Luders, who is just in front of him before this heat.
And Chris, maybe talk a little bit about the role of the brakeman as they go into this second run. Many people think the brakeman has something to do during the run, but really he doesn't.
The brakeman, it's the brakeman's responsibility. He's got to be extremely aggressive at the start, pushing that 550-pound sled, getting it to its maximum velocity at the 50-meter start. And then once the brakeman jumps in, the brakeman knows exactly where he is on every portion of the track. He can feel if the driver goes late into a corner or if the driver goes early into a corner. He can experience the pressure changes throughout the corner and can sense the driver's mistakes. But he doesn't know the ultimate outcome until he sees the clock at the finish line.
And right here at the finish, here comes Germany 2, and this is where Kevin Kuski does his stuff, puts on the brakes, and Germany 2 is in first place by 11/100ths of a second, moving Reto Gucci of Switzerland back into 2nd.
And that will put the pressure on Pierre, but Pierre has got to be very confident after a strong first run. Here you see him down the straightaway, just letting the sled flow. He will take 2 hits before going into Kreisel. Already ahead of Gucci at the point of Kreisel, and there you see about 14/100ths of a second difference in that space between the blue sled and the yellow sled.
So Andre Lange will be the leader right now. He'll wait at the finish line to see how the rest of the sleds come down. And at the start, Pierre Lueders of Canada, along with Ken LeBlanc.
This is the first time this year that going into the second heat, Pierre Lueders and Ken LeBlanc have a shot at the medals. And Pierre is a fighter, and let's see if he can battle the Germans here on their home track.
A good start is essential for the Canadians. Here they come out. And their start is just 3/100ths of a second behind the best.
When Ken loaded into the sled skidded slightly sideways going into that small change of direction, so it was very difficult for Pierre to realign the sled to get it straight down that straightaway through the top of the track.
And we'll see in the intervals how far back or ahead the Canadians are.
When you make mistakes at the top, the slower portion of the track, they are more costly than when you make mistakes at the bottom, the faster section.
He's 4/100ths behind the Germans at the last interval.
And there he steered too hard off of C-curve, the pressure holding the back of the sled to the wall, causing a skid down the straightaway, and that will hurt his time. As you see there, he lost to Lange by 2/100ths of a second.
And Ivo Ferriani, the coach, frustrated by that result. You saw him scream there. And Pierre Lueders, by 2/100ths of a second, is in second place right now.
The small mistake made at the top of the track, as you see here, has cost him position against the German.
So Pierre Lueders and Ken LeBlanc wanted to be in first place after their run, but they're currently in second. Andre Lange and Germany 2, along with Kevin Kuski there, are the current leaders. But up next, Germany 1, René Spies and Franz Sagmeister. And you can hear the German fans getting wound up for this start, trying to push them on to a very quick start and maintain their position in this run.
And sometimes the track conditions can change going into the second heat. If you've made a material selection, a selection of what type of steel you want to use for your runners, that may lend well to the conditions of the first heat, air temperature or ice temperature, that can change into the second heat, and sometimes the outcome can be quite different given that all other elements are the same, the driving and the push. But René Spies, he knows this course. As you watch him go through Kreisel, nice smooth line through Kreisel.
They had the fastest start of the competition so far, and they've maintained that speed all the way through the course. And the intervals, they seem to be picking up speed all the way. And I think Lange knows, as you see him on the right-hand corner of the screen, that he's going to be caught by Germany 1, and he is by almost 3/10ths of a second.
René Spies fighting for a medal here on the German track. Now he's just got to go into the winner's circle and wait to see what happens with the following sleds.
That must be a tough place to be, because you know the guys behind you already have an advantage.
It's actually a nice place to be, because if you know you put in a fast run, your second run, you can go to the winner's circle and say, let's see what these guys got. Can they beat what I just did? And you stand there and you watch the clock, and you know if they make mistakes throughout the bottom, you'll see it reflected in the time as you stand there and watch yourself move ahead of other teams that have been faster than you in the first run.
Coming up, the second run of World Cup leader Martin Annan as Visa World Cup Bobsleigh continues. An event. Our next action on Visa World Cup Bobsleigh is the World Championships from St. Moritz, Switzerland on Saturday, March the 3rd at 3:30 Eastern. And you see many of these faces, Martin Annan and Beat Hefty of Switzerland too. I see a rip in Annan's sleeve there. Where would he get that?
The tear in the back of his speed suit would come from the loading of the brakeman. They've got very sharp spikes on their feet. When the brakeman jumps in, sometimes he'll catch his spikes on the material of the speed suit of the driver and cause some tears. One thing the driver does not want is his spike sticking into his elbows when he's trying to drive. And sometimes in the four-man, that can happen because in those sleds, it's a very tight fit.
Martin Annan is chasing René Spies of Germany. He had a 6/100ths of a second lead on him after the first run, so he has a bit of a cushion.
And Marty Annan, he's confident that he'll have a fast start. It just becomes a question of good driving here on the Königssee track to try to take the Germans here at home.
And it is very tight, only 2/100ths of a second on that last interval. Here comes Annan in Switzerland too, and through by 100th of a second. He misses Spies.
Spies put in a great run. He put in a smoker. And again, he just stood there in the winner's circle watching to see if Marty Annan could knock him off. He was confident, and he watched his time slowly catch Annan as he came down the track. Very nice load by the brakeman. Now here you see coming out of the 4th S, Annan is slightly in front of Spies because of the faster start, and Spies will drive better and take him down on the lower section of the track.
Annan had the lead by 2/100ths of a second coming through the final curves, and you can see as he shakes his head, he knew he lost it at the bottom part of the track. Currently in second place, so Switzerland 2 in second. Rennie Spies of Germany continues to lead. Coming up later today on Sports Saturday, Karcher Junior Curling Championships from St. Catharines, Ontario.
There you see Christian Reich in the background, just trying to get his mind into focus as he watches Langen get set at the start.
Germany 3, Christoph Langen and Marcus Zimmermann are chasing these two guys, their teammates. And here go Langen and Zimmermann.
Christoph Langen has been here many times before. He knows this track, and he's probably even thinking, here I am, I'm 1/100th of a second away from winning this race. I know this track so well, I cannot screw it up. It would be a great embarrassment to me to screw this one up.
And he had a big cushion as well because he was 1/10th of a second ahead of Spies after that first run. So Langen has a big cushion here to work with.
The sled just shot out of that 4th S. He changed his direction nicely, letting the sled just run out of the 4th S, straight down the straightaway into Kreisel.
And Christoph Langen is lengthening his lead here on Germany 1.
With a great start, he's driving so well, he's got great speed, and now 29/100ths of a second in front of Spies.
A good run for Germany 3. They're in the lead at 1:35.07. So René Spies will take a walk off the podium, and it is Langen now who is in the lead.
He knows he's put the pressure on Reich as Reich prepares for his final run. There, Langen already well ahead of Spies, both driving similar lines. Langen probably a little bit higher as you see him lose pressure, but controlling it nicely.
So it comes down to the final sled. Switzerland 3, Christian Reich and Steve Underhoub. Leaders after the first heat, but only by 100th of a second. So they really will have to put the pedal to the metal here in the second run.
Christian Reich wants so badly to beat the Germans here in Königssee. I mean, the track is just lined with German fans, and he'd love to come here and beat them on their home track, this technical track here in Königssee.
Let's see what kind of start Switzerland 3 can get.
That was a very nice start, a nice quick load. He was a little shaky off of that first change of direction. Now he moves into the 4th S, nice and high early into the 1st S, which will set him up, as you see, nice high.
Now he seems to be losing a little bit as he comes down the track.
I think that small sideways skid at the top near the first corner has cost him a lot of speed here on the last run as he tries to get the gold medal.
As you can see on that interval, he's dropped now behind Langen.
1/100th of a second separated these two at the start of the heat.
And there's the celebration for Langen as Christian Reich comes in 14/100ths of a second behind him, and it is Langen who takes the victory. Switzerland 3 will drop back.
It is still a great finish for both of these competitors coming out of the second group to start the race on this track, which tends to slow as sleds continually go down. Christian Reich had 300ths of a second advantage on the start over Langen, but here you see Langen with better driving, starting to pass him here in Kreisel.
And what do these other drivers have to be thinking about Christoph Langen as he comes up big in this race just before the World Championships? He's got so much experience, and he's still at the top of his game.
Langen's competitors cannot be concerned as to whether or not he will perform well. They know he will perform well when he's healthy.
Christoph Langen takes the gold medal here in his home course. Christian Reich of Switzerland in second place, and René Spiess of Germany in third as the Swiss and the Germans sweep the top 5. But a good result as well for Canada 1. Pierre Luters and Ken LeBlanc in 6th position. It's their best result of the World Cup season, and they're looking for more.
We worked really hard over Christmas, myself and Ken, trying to get into better shape for the better start. Our sled was repaired by Marco Serpaius in Italy, and thanks to Ivo running around back and forth between Innsbruck and Cortina, we were able to fix everything, and I think this is slowly a better start for us.
In the overall World Cup standings, Martin Annan of Switzerland continues to lead, but right behind him is René Spiess of Germany. Andre Lange is in there as well, Christian Wright and Reto Gucci. Pierre Luters of Canada back in 9th place, but he's coming on as this season comes to a close and we head to the World Championships. We'll be back with some closing comments from Koenigsee as the Visa World Cup Bobsleigh continues.
BC. Brought to you by Visa, proud sponsor of our Canadian bobsleigh teams.
A tremendous competition for the Germans as they sweep the podium in the 4-man, and in the 2-man, Christoph Langen wins the gold. The question, Chris, is whether Langen, who's a veteran, can stick around at this level through Salt Lake City.
That is the big question for Salt Lake City. For Christoph Langen, he has battled injury the last 4 or 5 years, and the sport of bobsleigh is a very tough sport. These guys in season are like finely tuned race cars and are vulnerable to injury at any time. Langen knows he has to stay healthy because he can be replaced by any other German and still they can come out winners.
On the other hand, Pierre Luters and Ken LeBlanc with their best result of the World Cup season, and that looks very good for them after the struggles they've had.
It was critical for Pierre to be in the top 6 of this race. He did not have a strong second heat, but still finished in the top 6. This will now give Pierre the confidence to know that he can go to St. Moritz and be in contention because their starts are getting closer and he knows he can drive that track.
That's our next event, the Visa Men's World Bobsleigh Championships from St. Moritz, Saturday, March the 3rd at 3:30 Eastern. Up next, we have the Karcher Junior Men's Curling Championships. Don Whitman with Olympic medalist Mike Harrod.
Drivers. It's the Visa Men's World Bobsleigh Championships from St. Moritz, Switzerland. Today, the great Christoph Langen of Germany will drive on his arch-rival's track in Switzerland for the Visa Men's World Bobsleigh Championships. The world's only natural ice bobsleigh track is the venue this afternoon in St. Moritz. Good afternoon, I'm Mark Lee, along with 4-time Olympian Chris Laurie, and there's no one in the world with the credentials of a Christoph Langen. He's the 4-time world champion, back to defend, albeit after a season plagued by injuries and missed events.
Christoph Langen, he has the credentials, but most of all, he knows what it takes to win a world championship. He took some time off the World Cup circuit, sacrificing the overall World Cup crown to focus on this event. Clearly, his planning is proving effective because he dominated the 6 training runs throughout the week.
And you know, he had the same plan last year. He missed 2 World Cup events and went on to win the World Championships in Germany. This title, though, is different from the World Cup crown.
The world champion is based on this singular event, the victor of this event, whereas the overall World Cup champion is based on the accumulation of points throughout the World Cup season.
Let's talk about the Canadians, Pierre Luters and Ken LeBlanc. They've had a rough season, but it appears to have turned around 1 week previous with a 6th place finish in Koenigsee.
Well, Ken has had a chance to recover from injury, and Ken is very dynamic and very strong when he's recovered from injury. They've worked on their equipment, and now it's a question of whether Pierre can or cannot compete with these guys driving on this track.
The veterans are ready. Langen, the world champion, and the Olympic champion, Luters, for St. Moritz. Here's what's on the menu today, both the two-man and four-man competitions. Chris will show us the inner workings of a bobsleigh in his Bob Speed segment, and I'll tell you about the Swiss connection that brought Canada greatness but now conspires against us. The weather conditions in the Swiss Alps, fairly mild and overcast as we get set for the two-man competition. It's -3, the ice temperature -3, control steel of the runners at -1. Crowds in St. Moritz, always a factor here. They love this sport. In Switzerland, a huge tradition that dates back to the late 1800s. The track, as we mentioned, the only natural ice bobsleigh run left in the world. Chris, it's long and it's fast. Take us for a test drive.
The start on this track is very short. The driver has to get in quickly and grab the ropes and get the sled under control before that first change in direction. There's a long, flat straightaway before the first corner. The corners here are under names rather than numbers. The first corner now approaching us is called Wall. Wall corner is a long left-hand corner still at the slower portion of the track. Then you enter into snake combination. The first snake and the second snake, the tightest corner combination on the track, followed by Sunny Corner, which will set you up for Nash-Dixon. It is very important to go nicely through Nash-Dixon to set you up for Horseshoe. This long straightaway can cost you a lot of time if you make mistakes. Horseshoe, a lot of pressure in that corner, followed by Telephone and Shamrock, leading you into the extremely fast lower portion of the track. Devil's Dyke kicks you into Tree, Bridge, and that will fire you down 140 kilometers an hour in a four-man through Leap and Sachs and a straightaway into the finish where you will pull 7 G-forces. Through the finish line, the brakeman will apply the brakes, and that is a corner just to change the direction for the brakeman, and this is where they will stop the sled at the end of the run.
And of course, the sleds have been standardized in length and weight since 1985. The two-man on the left quite a bit shorter than the four-man on the right.
The two-man and the four-man are driven quite differently. The two-man is very sensitive. The four-man, you have to take a different line, and when you get into trouble with a four-man, it can be very dangerous.
The Germans won both gold medals at the World Championships 1 year ago, but this is Swiss turf here in St. Moritz, and look at the overall World Cup standings. It's the young Swiss rookie Martin Annen in the lead right now, just 2 points ahead of René Spies. Andre Lange in third for Germany. The great Christoph Langen, after missing the first event of the year with an injury, is in 8th place right now. Pierre Luters of Canada 1 clinging to 9th, hoping to move up throughout the course of this season. And you can see that snow flurries have descended upon the St. Moritz area for the start of the two-man competition. And in the first heat, we're looking first at René Spies, number 2 ranked on the World Cup Tour for Germany. He's only 26 years of age, another one of the young gun drivers who have raised some eyebrows around Europe so far this season. His first place finish in Altenburg, his best event so far on the tour this year as he gets set to drive. How about the flurries, Chris? How will they affect this run?
Well, it's only snowing lightly right now, so it won't have too much effect, but it can have, if it gets heavier, it can have an effect in the pushing grooves and on the track.
Push bar late to come down for Spies.
You want to get that push bar down as soon as possible. When you get into the sled, your foot will touch a lever that will actually release the push bar downwards. If you leave it up, it can hit that side wall, and not only will it bend the push bar and it won't be able to anchor itself properly, but it will also push the sled into a skidding down that long first straightaway.
Well, they've battened down the hatches, and the Spies Germany 2 sled is now cruising.
René Spies is the first sled off the hill. It's always nice to be the first one off the hill. You set the pace for the rest of the sleds, and then you just sit back and watch the others come down as the race develops.
Spies was 4th in last year's World Cup event here on the St. Moritz track, and he's moving quickly now.
The bottom of this track is exceptionally fast. It is the fastest in the entire World Cup circuit.
And a time of 1 minute, 4.93 seconds for Germany 2's René Spies. The German contingent will accept that.
That's still a fast time considering the snowy conditions. The snow will accumulate in the straightaways, but you won't have any snow, of course, accumulating on the corners because, of course, they're corners.
And so it's the luck of the draw for Rene Spies to be driving through this snow flurry activity, unusual in an area that has 322 days of sunshine a year. Martin Annan, the leader on the World Cup two-man circuit right now, only 26, the cheesemaker out of Arth, Switzerland. And you can hear the cowbells banging in the background as the Swiss crowd anticipates his first drive here in the two-man competition.
And you see how Marty Annan took his helmet cover. He had it covering his visor so that the snow does not accumulate on the visor before he takes his run. That's when the snow will start to accumulate on the visor because it's warm, and the snow has a chance to sit on the visor and just sort of fog up your vision.
There's the fastest start of the first run. Martin Annan off quickly.
Marty Annan has had consistently strong starts all season long. His brakeman has done a very good job in keeping him in contention with the leaders.
He really took this circuit by the scruff of the neck with victories in Eagles and Cortina on the World Cup circuit. And now he's looking for his first World Championship.
He was excellent through Nash-Dixon combination leading into Horseshoe.
Quickly building up a lead, 24/100ths of a second better than Rene Spies.
Marty Annan is the guy that they're now going to look to set the pace for this track because he was the Swiss champion. They have the Swiss championships right after Christmas to determine who's going to race in the World Championship here on their home track, and Marty Annan was the victor.
Yes, Martin Annan, they put on the brakes and swerved to a stop. 0.3 of a second faster than the Germans. And so the Swiss lay down the gauntlet on their home track.
And the next guy we've got to look for is Christoph Langen, who dominated training throughout the week. So Marty Annan has set the pace.
Here's the veteran, Christian Reich of Switzerland won. He was one of the dominant forces 1 year ago on the World Cup circuit, winning the two-man overall competition. And they're off.
Christian Reich has a long history in the sport of bobsleigh. At the 1989 World Championships, he was a crewman for Nico Baracchi, where they won a silver medal. He was always one of the best Swiss crewmen.
His start, though, is slightly slower than Martin Annan's, so he'll have to make up ground down the course with his driving. And it's been a tough year for Reich. He's yet to win a medal on the World Cup circuit coming into these championships.
Christian Reich has himself in a very good position because although he has not won a medal, he has always been in the top 4, top 5, top 6, always a bridesmaid. Here he goes through the wall corner, down in the faster part of the track.
1/10 of a second back, though.
The reason it's so fast at the bottom of this track is because the corners are very open, and when you don't have that tight radius to control the speed, the sled just flies to the bottom of this track.
There's the time, 9/100ths of a second behind his teammate Martin Annan.
That's a very good run after when you consider how far he was behind at the start.
Right now the Swiss are sitting 1-2. Christian Reich in second place with a time of 1 minute 4.7 seconds. To the top, Canada 1 ready to go. Pierre Luters and Ken LeBlanc. There's the head coach of the Canadian team, Ivo Ferriani, dusting off the snow. For Pierre Luters, wow, it's been a tough year. His sled has broken down on 3 different occasions. He's had trouble with the push. LeBlanc has not been 100% because of injuries. What have they got here?
Pierre has been so fortunate to have Ken LeBlanc healthy for this race, because this is a race where they have a chance to put it all together and make a mark and know that he's back in contention.
The push has been the Canadian hallmark. Let's look at the time. Oh, 5/100ths back. They're in third place at the top of the course.
That is still a strong start for Pierre and Ken when you consider the great condition of Marty Annan and his brakeman. Ken LeBlanc is still pushing like he's in his early 20s.
Looking strong on the start there. They've dropped some time now, 13/100ths back as Ivo Ferriani watches on at a monitor position at the top of this track.
That slightly slower start time will be shown after the first split or two, and they'll have a chance to start coming back at the faster part of the bottom.
Luters driving a fine line here now. Yes, he's making up time. Back to 5/100ths back. of Martin Annan, and Ferriani is really going wild.
So he was slower at the top, but he is driving exceptionally well versus these Swiss, gaining time on them at the bottom.
He's got him. Luters is in first place in the first heat, has passed Martin Annan of Switzerland by 7/100ths of a second. Are they happy?
It is a huge confidence builder to know that when you've arrived at the bottom after your first run at a World Championships, to know that you're now in front of the Swiss, you know that you've got a shot.
Well, after all the problems this team has had with equipment and confidence, they're riding high now. But look at this. The great four-time champion, Christoph Langen, is next. Back to defend the title he won a year ago in Altenburg, Germany. This time he'll drive through what looks like heavier snow flurries now, Chris.
Christoph Langen is starting number 9 in the first group, which is 10 sleds. And the heavy snow can have an effect as it builds up in the starting grooves, as you see there, can make the sled heavier.
Let's take a look at this start. These guys are known for an explosive start. Oh, 8/100ths faster. That's a new track start record at 5.18 seconds.
All of the competitors are looking at Christoph Langen to see what he's going to do both at the start and at the finish, because he has been so dominant through training all week long.
Yes, clearly he's had the superior training runs, and might that be a forecast of what's to come here today?
When you consider the snow that can be accumulating in the starting grooves and on the flat portions of the track, Christoph Langen is having an incredible run, already 26/100ths in front of everybody else.
Yes, he's evaporated Luther's time, and faster, now 34/100ths of a second ahead of Canada 1.
Christoph Langen is eating this track up. He's having a very nice run, nice and smooth through the bottom.
At the finish, no contest. Langen in the lead by 35/100ths of a second with a time of 1:04.19. That's a new track record in St-Moritz, hitting an average speed of 139 kilometers per hour.
To be 35/100ths of a second in front of your colleagues after only the first heat of the World Championships, that's almost an annihilation right from the start. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens through the rest of this race with Christoph Langen.
This is Brian Zarski and John Sokolowski of Canada 2. Zarski keeping his helmet hood on until the last second because of the increased flurry activity.
Yeah, you don't want that snow collecting on the visor and causing some visibility impairments even before you just get into the sled, because that moisture can cause even more snow to collect on your visor.
Well, this will be a hard act to follow for this number 2 Canadian team. In trouble on the start, veering off the first turn.
Well, you can see as we go back to the replay on the start, Brian Zarski tends to run it a little bit long, and when he loads into the sled, he uses both hands to slide into the sled, and that can take a little bit of extra time, because on this track, it's extremely important to get your driving ropes early and get a hold of them early, because there's a change of direction right after loading into the sled.
Swerve there for the Canadians, and they're leaking oil. Down 86/100ths now behind the top time of Christoph Langen.
Well, this is going to be a nice experience for Brian Zarski, this World Championship. It takes a good 4 or 5 years for a driver to get comfortable with the environment, to get the experience, to go back to the tracks and back to the tracks, to get that experience, to drive them well, and to be competitive.
Zarski smoothing out through the bottom of the course. Here's his time, a second and a half back, but he'll be in 13th place, and that is received with a smile from his head coach, Ivo Ferriani. 105.7 for Brian Zarski, 13th place. That is a lot higher than he's finished throughout the course of this season, when he's usually in the late 20s.
Well, we still have a lot of strong competitors to come yet, because some of the stronger competitors have chosen to start into the second group, hoping that it would be sunny.